We have a lot of big announcements coming up.
Yeah, wow. I mean, that's just what we're announcing today. We have more to announce.
When do we want to announce the mid-phase surprise that you just texted me about?
I could do it anytime.
In 2017, Universal Studios announced the birth of a new shared universe of monster movies, bringing their classic horror icons into the contemporary franchise film landscape. But after the critical and financial failure of its first installment, the project was indefinitely abandoned. Now, in 2024, the powers that be have called upon one pulp horror devotee and one snarky film critic to unearth the concept. I'm Dylan Roth.
And I'm Dalton DeShane.
Are you afraid of the dark universe?
Welcome back to Are You Afraid of the Dark Universe, where I am the person putting my computer in focus mode so that I don't get notifications while we record. This is the podcast where we attempt to... do the universal thing.
Yeah, you know what? All of you, please also put your phones in focus mode.
Yes.
Because we deserve your full attention.
Yeah, please, if you're driving, pull over to the side of the road.
One of the biggest criticisms we've received as a show is that it really does require all of your attention.
Yeah.
It's not passive listening, and you know what? That's a feature. Okay? That's not a bug. That's how we like it.
Yeah, if you're like working, doing this like while you work your email job, stop sending emails. Just sit quietly at your desk, close your eyes, and finish listening to this episode.
Yeah,
it's very important.
No one's going to know.
This is the podcast where we attempt to revitalize...
Resurrect
Universal's failed cinematic universe of monster movies, one pitch at a time. I am your caffeinated host, Dalton DeShane.
And I am your fucking exhausted host, Dylan Roth.
Which is kind of a reverse dynamic for us. That's nice.
This is going to be an interesting episode. I should warn you, though, that when I get tired, I get sillier in general.
That's good, because this is the silly episode. Recaps are the silly episodes.
In order to try and prime myself for this, I did just listen to our first recap episode in the car on the way here. That's right, I said car. I bought a car today.
Yes.
It took 6 hours. I'm really tired.
And then drove straight here from the lot.
Here from the fucking lot.
It was funny because I was thinking earlier today, our last recap episode, we were fucking insane because we had just recorded our Mummy's Hand planning episode. And so it was our second record of the night, and we were out of our minds. And this time I was like, oh, we're just recording the recap tonight. We're going to be fine. We're going to be normal.
I was almost worried that we weren't going to have something to make this episode manic.
Yes.
It's like, I think about, there's an episode of The West Wing where...
we're already going on Dylan's off-topic rant.
That's right.
This
is my one for the day.
We need a theme song for this.
Jed Bartlett is about to go in debate for his re-election campaign. It's the one big debate that they're going to do. And he's reminiscing about how he really aced a debate for his first presidential election because his tie backstage had caught fire by accident, or someone spilled something on it. And in the last moments, he had to replace his tie, and it gave him a big shot of adrenaline right as he was stepping out on stage. And he's like, what are we going to do this time? I don't know what I think I'm missing that. And then right as they're about to go on, the first lady, who hasn't had a lot going on this season because Stockard Channing's a very busy actress, and also my wife, she smiles at him and she talks about how proud she is and he's going to do great. And then she snips his tie in half. And like his body man, the broadcast has started. The moderator is introducing the show, and he's like, "Are you crazy lady?" And she's like, "Have fun." And so he has to grab a tie from somebody on his way there. Then he gets up and he fucking smokes that debate, because of course he does, because in Aaron Sorkin's world, debates are always great and the Democrats always win them.
So next time we do a recap episode, you're going to unfortunately have to buy a boat before we start taping. What I love about the Dylan off-topic rant is that it's always about a media property I haven't seen. It's either Star Trek, West Wing, or Metal Gear Solid.
Yes, we were just doing a Metal Gear Solid rant before we started airing.
Just before we hit record, Dylan had a Metal Gear Solid 4-1.
Someday. As those remasters come out, you should play Snake Eater when it gets remastered this year.
I should probably get into
fucking
those.
Fantastic. My personal favorite.
But what is this episode about? Today, we are going to be recapping Phase 3 so far. The idea is, if you are a new listener to the show and you're hopping on because of our last guest, Daniel Kibblesmith, or our next guest, who I will be announcing at the end of the show, and you are joining us for the first time, obviously, there are hours and hours and hours of podcasts here to catch up on, and we're about to go into our Infinity War, basically, which we call Dark Legion, Death's Door. You want to get caught up, but you don't want to listen to 100 hours of podcasting. Here's what you do. We did one of these recap episodes last season, just before our last Dark Legion movie, where we recapped all of Phase 1 and Phase 2.
Yes, that episode is called Our Story So Far, a Breathless Dark Universe Recap.
If you listen to that and then listen to this, you will be theoretically fully caught up in time for Death's Door. Now, will you retain all the information that we're shouting at you across those, 2.5 to 3 hours? Probably not, but you'll be good enough.
Yeah.
You'll have the gist.
If you're the kind of person who'd rather read the Cliff's Notes of something or cram for a test, that's how you cram.
If
Because
you
I
like
don't
reading
recommend,
Wikipedia plot summaries.
Yes, I don't recommend listening to our podcast at 4x speed because I'll just disappear. You just won't hear me at all.
You'll just be a high-frequency buzzing, yeah. But there is an alternative, though. I mean, we, of course, recommend you listen to this episode, but if you would also like to be an insane person, even more insane than we are, we have a very special announcement to make. We have been diligently putting together what we call the director's cuts of our episodes. Our director's cuts are edited versions of the episodes that are just the film scripts. So none of our discussion at the beginning, between the acts, it is just the movie from beginning to end in one big chunk. And a lot of these movies, it turns out, are movie length. They're like anywhere from 1:15 to 1:50. On September 21st, the day before Death's Door goes live.
That's a Saturday.
It's a Saturday. We will be hosting on YouTube a live stream marathon of all of Phase 3 so far. The director's cut. So just movie after movie after movie. In one big, long marathon. Now, I'm still not sure exactly how long that's going to run, so I don't have the start time yet, but keep an eye on our social media channels. We'll be announcing the start time. This is available to everyone, not just patrons, and we will have a live chat. So if you want to join in with other fans of the Dark Universe and listen to our movies with a group in real time and talk about them as they happen, tune in for the Phase 3 live stream on September 21st on our YouTube channel. We're Are You Afraid of the Dark Universe on YouTube. It's going to be a really fun time. You obviously don't have to stay the whole time. I don't even think we're going to be live in there the whole time. We'll probably switch off. Yeah. We'll be in and out.
It's a Saturday and I have a baby. I will be in and out.
And who knows? We might still be editing Death's Door that day.
Could be.
We might be putting the finishing touches on that.
Yeah, to step out to score the climax of the movie.
Yeah. So far, we have almost finished Act 1.
Yeah, it's really coming along. I'm very happy with what we have so far.
Yes, we have some really good stuff.
We just had a spirited debate about some of the choices that we've been making.
And what was great is we landed on a place that's right in the middle of both ideas,
yeah,
I think.
It's great. I think we're pretty good at that.
So, how this is going to work today is we are going to start with Dark Legion, The Mummy's Hand, our last Dark Legion crossover movie. You can think of that as our Age of Ultron if you're comparing us to the MCU. We are going to recap that because we didn't recap it in the last one. Also, that's going to be the hardest one for me to recap because that was a long time ago and I haven't re-listened to it, I don't think. Then we're going to go through all of our Phase 3 movies one by one, including the Dark Universe Holiday Special. Yeah, we are putting a 5-minute timer on ourselves so that we don't go too long. And then at the end of the episode, after our break, let's talk about Dracula. I'm already feeling manic and crazy. I already feel like I'm jumping around.
Well, because normally we do this episode, we do our episode of our show, and we have a really clear, we have a routine. We do all of our script episodes have the same structure. All of our guest episodes have the same structure. This is only the second time we've done this, and it was a year ago.
I feel crazy.
Yeah.
Was it a year ago?
It was a year ago.
Oh, Jesus, yeah. Oh, boy. Let's talk Dracula. Throughout Phase 3, we introduced a new little kink in our storytelling. And we introduced a lot of new kinks for our characters. But particularly Victor Frankenstein. No. I mean, he learned about kinks. He doesn't have them. He's asexual.
Yeah, pointedly, not really his thing.
Yeah, but he learned a lot about them in our banter.
Yes.
We decided that in our post-credits scenes of all the Phase 3 episodes, we were going to follow up on Dracula, who had recently gone to hell. We started doing these with our first episode of Phase 3, The Mummy Heaven's Gate, and continued his story at the end of every canon episode. But a lot of you have been saying, hey, can we get a recap at some point? I don't remember what happened. It's been too long. It's been a month since we've heard this. So after our break, we have compiled all of those post credits into one chunk. And it turns out it is about 35 minutes long, just of Dracula in Hell. So we're making this our little DVD bonus feature compilation, alternatively either called Dracula in Hell or...
No, I liked calling it Dracula in
Oh, you like Dracula in Hell.
You like Dracula...
Dead and hating it.
Yes.
After the Leslie Nielsen film. Yeah, so we will have all of that at the end, and then we will announce our very special 50th episode guest coming on just before Death's Door. We have a lot of big announcements coming up.
Yeah, wow. I mean, that's just what we're announcing today. We have more to announce.
When do we want to announce the mid-phase surprise that you just texted me about?
I could do it anytime. Folks, I have a surprise additional entry so that we will end up with, at the end of the Death's Door saga, there will be a total of 30 canon entries. But I'm not going to tell you what it is yet.
Yeah, but we're actually adding another movie to Phase 3, if you can believe it.
That's going to push Dark Legion 4 back a month.
Mm-hmm.
But you will get an additional Dylan pitch.
Yes.
And the one thing that I will say about this is that for all of in my critical career, I am very, very harsh on fan servicey bullshit, on stuff that doesn't feel like its own movie and it's just there to satisfy like a larger mythology.
And now you're going to do it.
I'm going to do a movie that I would give the most scathing review. Hopefully, in the execution of the idea, it will be really fun. But its purpose is explicitly, this one's for you guys.
We had a lot of people in the Discord recently talking about how much they loved Mummy Returns, how it's one of their favorite pitches. And it was very surprising to me because I always think of that as one of the weaker ones, and it's mostly just because you hated it during the pitch.
Hate it
because I brought back Brendan Fraser.
I didn't like the precedent that it set. I didn't like the way it falls into a trend in Hollywood that I don't care for. First of all, I think people like that one a lot because of your claustrophobia scenes, which are really, really scary and have nothing to do with the grander mythology of the Dark Universe or the old Mummy movies. I think that's probably where most of the fun lies. I don't hear people talking a lot about Rick O'Connell. I hear people talking about those sequences, which are very well rendered in your script. However, yes, this one's going to be in the midst. It will be the third of what are now 5 pitches that come in between Dark Legions 3 and 4. The other ones, so far as I know, and so far as we've determined, are going to be focusing on new and different characters, self-contained stories.
Wait, you're leaving Field of Nightmares to be the last one?
Probably, yes.
Okay.
But it'll also be in baseball season now.
Great.
Which it wasn't going to be.
Great.
In between those, there will be one which is fucking mythology heavy, people you know, and I'll leave it at that for now, and I'll announce it, I think, maybe after Death's Door.
But enough about what's coming. Let's look back at the past, at what has been, and let's reflect on another year of the Dark Universe in our Dark Universe clip show.
We should do an in memoriam segment.
Honestly, this would be the episode for it.
Oh, I can think of...
Okay, well, I'm bleeping that out. Okay, let's start with The Mummy. Or no, we're
going to start with
Dark Legion, The Mummy's Hand.
As this is a script that Dalton and I wrote together, we are going to follow the pattern we established with recapping Dark Legion, House of Dracula in our previous recap episode. One of us is going to recap the first half of the movie.
Dibs on first half.
Good, that's fine.
Okay.
You can recap. You have 2.5 minutes to recap the first half of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have the remaining 2.5 minutes of our 5-minute timer. Because yes, we are time boxing each of these recaps to 5 minutes so we don't go crazy.
Yeah.
To finish the movie. So if you can try and get to the midpoint of the film, Dalton, I'll pick it up from there.
Okay.
All right. 5 minutes are on the clock. I'll signal you when you're done.
Okay.
Ready? Go.
It's Jenny and Carol's lesbian wedding, which they are holding in England. And everybody's there, the whole Dark Legion, except for Dr. Jekyll, who is dead, and Nick Morton. His body is there, but it's been taken over by Imhotep, the mummy from the Brendan Fraser Mummy trilogy. He seems to be keeping an eye on things and maybe being a little sinister when all of a sudden the dance floor blows up because Claudia, the Phantom of the Opera from the Phantom of the Opera, is there. Back from death, newly possessed by Edward Hyde, the demon that possessed Dr. Jekyll. she blows up the wedding. Nick and Jenny defeat her and tie her up and take her to a prodigium facility that used to be Dr. Jekyll's. But remember, this isn't really Nick, it's Imhotep. They get there, and Jekyll's lab is now run by Evelyn O'Connell, a.k.a. Rachel Weisz from the Mummy trilogy. They meet her, they imprison Claudia in the basement, but Nick lets her go and then leaves. Jenny and Evelyn find that Claudia has been let go, and Claudia turns the place into a death trap. They eventually escape and drive somewhere else. Meanwhile, the rest of the Dark Legion unleash part of Set, which takes over Larry's body, and hints that Nick is missing. And so the Dark Legion go on a quest, I think, to try to save Nick. What do they? I don't remember what they do.
You skipped a big bunch here, which is that Evelyn O'Connell is at the base. The prodigium
I said that.
base. You didn't mention Evelyn.
Yes, I did.
You did?
I said played by Rachel Weisz from the original Mummy trilogy. And
God,
Jenny and Evelyn, you're out of it, bro.
I'm so tired.
You are out of it, bro.
Tired,
I talked about
gonna...
Evelyn.
Oh my God.
What time are we at?
You still have 3 minutes. We're fine.
I don't have 3 minutes. I have.
Yes, you have 3. I mean, you have 30 seconds.
I have 30 seconds.
Yes.
Then you're taking over.
Yes.
So Larry becomes possessed by Set, and they go and rescue Nick from where he has been buried in under a pyramid. And he comes out, and Imhotep is now free and pairs up with Claudia, and Nick is back.
Okay.
Oh, and they meet Hunter.
They also meet Hunter Marin, the keeper of the Black Lagoon, previously seen in the creature, rather in the Black Lagoon.
Yes.
They're 14 now and out non-binary. Okay, so the gang now assembled decides they're going to travel to Brazil.
Yes.
They're going to travel to Brazil in order, because that's where the Black Lagoon has gone.
Oh, yeah. And Imhotep is trying to get to the Black Lagoon.
Yes. Imhotep's plan is to go to the Black Lagoon and use this sort of backdoor to hell in order to raise an army and conquer the world with an army of the dead.
Mm-hmm.
So they got to stop him from doing that. Imhotep, now no longer having access to Nick's body, is now in a different body that looks like another character we don't care about. And so they all get on a plane. They're flying out to Brazil. But who sneaks onto the plane? Why, it's Imhotep's new pal, Claudia. She blows up the plane, or she crashes the plane. She forces the plane to crash after kidnapping Hunter from the plane.
Yes.
They're unable to stop the plane from crashing, so Nick's strategy is, okay, we'll just die in the plane crash, and then I'll bring us all back to life.
Yes.
So the rest of the Dark Legion all gets a little peek at hell.
Mm-hmm.
They don't love it.
Yeah.
But not Evelyn. Evelyn actually sees heaven again, like she did in the Mummy Returns 2002. Which I was then forced to follow up on in a future film.
Yes.
And, okay, so Claudia has kidnapped Hunter in order to find the lagoon, but is rescued by Jack. They all have this big fight at or around the lagoon where a bunch of demons break loose and fight and invade the city of Manaus in Brazil, which basically blows the whole case wide open for the world that demons are real, and the Dark Legion has to publicly fight them. Meanwhile, inside the Black Lagoon, Nick, Evelyn, and Jenny and Victor are fighting against Imhotep, trying to keep the door to hell closed. They fight. Victor loses an arm.
Victor tries to sacrifice himself.
And he can't do it. So he ends up losing an arm. They do defeat Imhotep, but not without the help of Set.
He actually just loses his hand.
Okay, he loses his hand. Set defeats Imhotep, but he doesn't do that alone either. Set reveals that he is in fact only one of multiple gods of death. And with a few more of his buddies or brothers or whatever by his side, they drag Imhotep catatonic into hell.
Mm-hmm.
And then 15 seconds left. Larry dies.
Yes.
Larry gets killed by Claudia, sacrifices his life in a fight saving Gwen. They're all very sad, and they decide at the end that they don't want to be the kind of family that only sees each other at weddings and funerals, and they resolve to be a part of each other's lives some more. That was 5 minutes.
Yes, we went a little bit over, but yes, it ends with everyone being friends and family.
I hope that was, I think I used this exact phrase last time. I hope that was legible.
People liked it last time. Last time we did this, Dylan thought it was unreleasable. And then people were like, this was really fun.
I had my doubts as to whether we should even put it out.
But
a little bit more confident now.
But yes, that was a little hectic, but that's The Mummy's Hand. People love that. It's one of people's favorite episodes. So if it didn't make sense, just go listen to it.
Yeah, it's a really good one.
Or
great, fun
who cares?
Cast,
you'll be fine.
Fun cast, fun score, if I dare say so myself. And that's how we capped off phase 2. And so going into phase 3, we decided to do a little twist on our usual format, which is that instead of doing sequels to our own series,
Yes.
we traded most of our characters.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of Dalton doing the Mummy 3, it then became my job to do the next Mummy movie, and then Dalton would do a werewolf movie, and I would do a Frankenstein movie, and so on.
Yeah.
And so with phase 3, we usually, by the way, threw to a clip in the last one at some point of the episode.
I don't think we should do that.
Okay, well, we can just cut this out.
Because we have the whole Dracula thing at the end.
That's true.
That'll be enough.
Okay. So I kicked off phase 3 with The Mummy, Heaven's Gate, which is a more... I actually have to have the timer on, don't I? I'm such a fucking mess right now, Dalton.
No, when are you starting the recap?
I will start the recap.
Okay. I'm going to start this, and I'm going to be very strict with you.
Okay.
Okay. The Mummy, Heaven's Gate, the kickoff of phase 3. I do, by the way, feel like this is probably the one people have the most questions about, partially because it's way back at the beginning of phase 3. This was last November. But also there's a lot of lore in this one.
Yes, which I
that
feel
think
like
people are maybe fuzzy about.
I will be able to do my best to clarify that without giving away too much of the game. And I have re-listened to all of these, by the way.
You re-listened to all of phase 3?
I re-listened to our show sometimes just to kind of get back in the mood of writing the show.
Nice.
And also because I know you don't have time to do it. And so by re-listening to the show, it makes sure that one of us is on the ball and that we're not going to disappoint our fans by misplacing some important piece of lore or not tying up a thread.
And yet we do that all the time anyway. All right, 5 minutes, go.
So The Mummy, Heaven's Gate is centered more around Evelyn than around Nick because we reintroduced her. Nick dragged her back into our mythology in The Mummy Returns, and then we introduced her into the Dark Legion. But we're stuck with this sort of what seemingly irreconcilable problem, which is that in the original Mummy Returns, Evelyn claims to see heaven during her brief death. And we've established there ain't no such thing in our dark universe. So my challenge was to reconcile that problem. So the whole movie was born out of that. The idea is that Evelyn, when she was killed in 1934, she actually was pulled to a different afterlife. And that's because she is, in fact, one of the Nephilim, a descendant of both humans and angels. And as a result, her soul continues to jump from body to body when she dies, but she never gets to go to the afterlife. One of the angels, Raphael, he's not having that. The angels are, in fact, I don't know how much of this I actually say, but it's okay for me to say this.
Yeah.
Angels here they're not like servants of God because the gods are evil. Right? They are risen demons rather than demons being fallen angels. So they are fighting a millennia-long resistance against hell, trying to prevent their horrible treatment of human beings and their harvesting of human souls to hell. They want their offspring in heaven with them. So they're trying to bring Evelyn back to heaven, but she instead ends up with an angel grafted to her soul, the way that Hyde was grafted to Jekyll. This is why she ages very, very slowly. She only ages when she sleeps. So this angel gets separated from her body. This is the angel Raphael. He's a handsome young man who is actually older than God. And he comes up with a plan with Evelyn to try and basically cave in the mouth of hell and prevent any more souls from going to hell. But what that's going to do is require that they drop the city of Cairo on it, clogging the portal to hell not only physically, but existentially through the mass death that destruction will cause.
Yeah.
It takes a long time in the story for us to reveal all of that to the audience, but I'm recapping.
Yes.
Sorry for killing all the suspense. Nick is also in this movie and is very romantically attached or fond of Evelyn, but nothing's ever happened between them because it's complicated. You know, they came into each other's lives after Evelyn had been wondering what happened to her husband and then gets the news that he's dead. But Nick is following her, through this grand adventure, doesn't know that there's an angel involved or what's happening. And then when he does find out, there is a big climactic battle in Cairo between a bunch of undead mummies and a bunch of terrifying biblical angels in Cairo over this monolith. And it seems as if basically we have a trolley problem. Nick discovers that the potential cost of this maybe not even permanent destruction of hell, or at least closing of hell, is going to cost hundreds of thousands of lives. And Evelyn is like, well, I'm old and I understand that everybody dies. And this is just what it's going to cost for us to save the day. So it's sad. Both of them have an argument. Nick ends up basically winning because one of Nick's allies, who Evelyn trusts, sneaks up on Evelyn and stabs her to death before she can activate this monolith. the door to gate, the gate to hell remains open, and the gate to heaven is temporarily open so that the angels can, come down and do this fight, and then they carry Evelyn's body up to heaven. Nick is mortified because he's just lost this woman that he loves again. And in a post-credit scene, we discover that the fact that Heaven's Gate had to open for this final battle may have finally allowed the forces of hell to find its secret dimensional location and invade. And the implication is that this entire fight costs heaven itself.
You have a minute left, amazingly. In that minute, tell us about the book and the time jump.
Yes, this story takes place 2 years after The Mummy's Hand. And in that time, Cassie Falk, Victor Frankenstein's sort of girlfriend, we don't know what their status of their relationship at this period of time. Now we can just say girlfriend.
Yeah.
She wrote a tell-all book about the Dark Legion, which has revealed lots of details about their lives and their exploits to the world. So the Dark Legion are now celebrities, and the existence of hell, for those who want to believe this book, is now verified. So it has sort of changed the power dynamic. The Dark Legion are no longer misfits. They are now celebrities. Dalton hates that I did this, and they can't do anything about it.
It's not what I would have done, but it's been a good narrative font for us.
Thank you, because I wanted to change the status quo. There's one other thing that I think we both regret that I did there, which is the idea of revealing the existence of hell to everybody. That was one step too far, I think.
Well, I don't know if I mentioned that on our last. No,
well, no,
on our
an episode
episode
you guys haven't heard yet.
Yes, I mentioned that on a
Dalton's
future
not
episode.
fond of that particular development. I've been thinking about it. I don't think that we did enough with it.
Yeah, that's the thing is it's the kind of thing that where once it's revealed, we either have to spend a lot of time on it or it feels, I don't know. It's a very big weighty thing.
Every single pitch, aside from Hunchback, which takes place before that, every single pitch this phase, I intended to do more with it. And it was just the kind of thing where there's just too much character business. There's too much plot to take care of. So I get to touch on a little bit in each of them. But yeah. Anyway, that's our time.
Mummy Heaven's Gate is one of my favorite pitches of yours this phase. I really like that one.
I'm really proud of it.
I think it has a great climax. I really love the early getting the team together, adventure stuff. It feels like the original Mummy trilogy in a lot of ways. And that's a compliment.
Well, I appreciate it. That was my intent. So
now we took a little break from all the heaviness to do the Dark Universe Holiday Special. The first of at least two.
Yes, that's right.
We are going to be doing one this year. I think we do first half and second. You can do the first half this time. I'll do the second half.
Sure.
And we'll still give each other 5 minutes.
We really don't need 5 minutes to recap.
Probably won't take us 5 minutes.
If I got through Heaven's Gate, I didn't even mention Masika as a character because I don't. It's the kind of thing where we're just trying to give you what you need.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So we're gonna do 5 minutes on the clock. Here we go. The Dark Universe Holiday Special. So the first Christmas after the Mummy's Hand, so this is before all the business with Heaven and Evelyn's death, the Dark Legion gets together at Castle Frankenstein, which is now being refurbished into a ski resort, for a nice Christmas dinner together. But of course, things don't go entirely as planned. While Nick and Jack, having missed their flight, are doing a planes, trains, and automobile style adventure, trying to get to Christmas, the rest of the Legion accidentally ends up on a terrifying horror adventure, or a comical comedy horror
adventure, yeah.
Because Carol accidentally kills the Krampus.
Yes.
And just like in the Santa Claus, killing the Krampus makes you Krampus. So Carol is gradually turning into a horrible little goat demon thing who needs to punish naughty children on Christmas. And the only way to keep Carol from going insane is to help her do this. So the whole gang gets out there with her, helps her to scare some children, and I guess this is where I'll hand it off to you, Dalton.
Yeah, there's really not much to talk about.
Not a lot of plot.
The gang goes out and scares a bunch of kids using their powers. By the time morning comes, Carol turns back into herself, and Jack and Nick arrive just in the nick of time. Yeah. Nick resurrects Krampus, who it turns out is actor David Krumholtz, who is also Krampus when he's not being an actor starring in films such as Oppenheimer.
This is a joke that derives from the fact that David Krumholtz was in the movie The Santa Claus.
Yes, as a sex symbol.
We tried really hard to get David Krumholtz to play himself on the episode.
We
didn't hear, but I mean, who are we, right? The
we're
thing is
about
that he
to
lives
have...
in Queens. I
Yeah.
thought we could get him in here. It would be
We
fun.
could get
We'll
him
buy
in the
him
studio.
dinner.
He could meet my cats.
Yeah. But
anyway.
you know what? He was on that Oscar run. You know,
Yeah.
it was right. This was after Oppenheimer came out. Maybe you can get a little bit big for his britches, David Krumholtz.
So David Krumholtz was not on the show.
Yeah.
But they revive him, which means Carol is no longer the Krampus. They all have a nice Christmas morning together. They open gifts, and Jack sits down at the piano, and they all sing a Christmas carol together. And then Cassie announces that she's writing a book.
There you go.
The end.
Dark Universe Holiday Special.
Yeah.
It's kicking off a tradition that we will be continuing this coming December. The secret title of this holiday special, by the way, was A Krampus Carol.
Yes.
Which
Revealed at
it's
the end.
funny that wasn't like a backwards title that we started with, and like it's not like you started from the idea we should do a joke, A Krampus Carol,
And have Carol be Krampus.
It's crazy that like no, of course, obviously that has to be the
Of
title.
course, it's the Krampus Carol.
But the whereas next year's is absolutely title driven. If we go with the idea that I have written down,
Yes.
we're going to be working backwards from a title. So if you have a guess at what the title's going to be, you won't guess it.
Now, with that light fare out of the way,
Let's get heavy, baby.
Let's get heavy.
Let's get to what I think is the bleakest episode of our show.
Yeah, probably. My first solo pitch of Phase 3 is called, this was one I definitely started with the title.
Yes.
A Native American Werewolf in Paris. Give me 5 minutes.
5 minutes on the clock. Ready, go.
So, this does not take place 2 years after The Mummy's Hand. We are back in time. Evelyn is alive. This is shortly after The Mummy's Hand. And Gwen, our lone surviving werewolf, has moved in with Victor and Cassie into a little apartment in Paris. She's very depressed about the loss of Larry. And so to cheer her up, Cassie and Victor invite her family out to Paris to spend a little time together. This includes her mother, her brother, and her uncle. They have a nice time. Her mom tells her to come back to the reservation, and Gwen is like, no, you don't understand me. And her family leaves. Almost immediately, Gwen finds a dead body out in the streets of Paris that has been mutilated by a werewolf. A lady shows up, played by Rebecca Ferguson, named June. And June tells her, yeah, there's a bunch of werewolf killings. There's a bunch of rogue werewolves. There's a lot of lore that's introduced about something called alpha wolves, which are descendants of the original werewolves who are more powerful.
And has nothing to do with alpha wolves you read about on Tumblr.
Yes.
Different thing.
Very different. It's not kink related, surprisingly, for a Dark Universe werewolf movie. June and Gwen team up to try to stop these werewolf killings. They hunt them down one by one. They kill... Oh, and also at this point, Gwen is taking a serum that prevents her from turning into a werewolf because she doesn't want to live that life anymore. Finally, they track down and kill the last werewolf, but just as they do, Gwen discovers June's horrible secret, which is that June herself is a werewolf, and she turned Gwen's family into werewolves shortly after they left Gwen's apartment, and they have been trapped as werewolves and been mindlessly killing because they never turned back human, and Gwen has essentially been hunting down and killing her own family for the past month. Gwen turns on June, but June now has drank a bunch of very powerful alpha wolf blood and goes after Gwen, who has taken the serum and can't turn into a werewolf. There's a big chase. Gwen realizes the only way to get the serum out of her blood is to drain all of the blood out of her body, so she does, and then is saved at the last minute by the powerful alpha wolf inside her. There's a lot of lore here that I'm just not going to get into the weeds about.
You've got time to explain what the alpha wolf is. You've got 2.5 minutes.
So the alpha wolf is like the original werewolves on planet Earth, and through their blood lineage, that blood is passed down through the ages. It turns out Gwen is of alpha wolf heritage. Now that blood, when drank by another werewolf, makes them more powerful. So June has been killing Gwen's family specifically to drink their blood and get more powerful. Now, Gwen is the last of her line, which makes her the most powerful alpha wolf. And alpha wolves cannot die when they are human. They can only die as wolves. So this is why Gwen drains all the blood from her body, because it drains the serum that prevents her from turning. But she can't die as a human, so the wolf saves her.
And importantly, now Gwen can change into wolf form at will.
Yes.
It's no longer tied to the full moon.
Yes.
And also, changing into a werewolf now is not turning into a large wolf, but is turning into a 10-foot tall Van Helsing 2003 style. 2006?
Something like that.
No, 2003 is the year the Prisoner of
2003,
Azkaban came out. Yeah. And a big muscly wolf creature that can kick your ass.
Yes. So that is Gwen now. So Gwen has now turned the tables on June and chases her to the top of the Eiffel Tower, where she rips her in half and howls at the moon. Along the way, she's picked up a little girlfriend named Charlie Willowbrook, played by Devery Jacobs, who comforts her in the wake of her family's death. And then she gets a distress call from Cassie, because at the same time this movie has been happening, Dylan's Hunchback of Notre Dame has also been happening. But I think that's it for a Native American Werewolf in Paris. Basically, Gwen killed her whole family, but is much more powerful now.
And much, much sadder.
And much sadder.
She's so sad now.
She's so sad now.
Okay, well, as you may have gleaned from that, my next pitch, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, is actually part of a loose duology with a Native American werewolf. We call those movies The House of Frankenstein.
Because they live in a house with Frankenstein.
Yes, and this story, my challenge was to write a different movie that takes place overlapping as much as possible with Dalton's story, but instead of following Gwen, it follows Victor and Cassie. And what I elected to do with that is to also do The Hunchback of Notre Dame, the last of the classic Universal monsters that we have not yet adapted.
Yes.
So 5 minutes on the clock. Here I go to tell you about my Hunchback of Notre Dame. So at the same time that all this business is happening with Gwen, Victor Frankenstein is discovering that his son, who he murdered centuries ago during his initial rage-filled awakening, is alive, kind of, sort of. William, or as he now calls himself, Quasimodo, was reanimated after his death by Caroline, Victor's daughter, William's brother, and then buried again, because in a part of the movie that I didn't really have time to write, they decided to do that. He was later reanimated by the Archbishop Claude Frollo, who is the leader of a French religious paramilitary organization called the Court of Miracles, and taken in as his son. So he's also sort of a Frankenstein creature, but rather than being big and hulking and covered in sores, he's like, I picture him more like the Disney Hunchback, but he moves like Beast from X-Men or like Spider-Man. He's a gamer. He loves games. He's deaf. He signs and he plays video games. And his best friend is his fellow agent, Esmeralda. And their job is to hunt monsters when the church tells them to do that. Quasimodo would really like revenge on his father, who he has not seen since his last memory of his father was being strangled to death by him. So the fact that Victor has now put his life back together and has a little family and is like a gentle giant, it makes him go kind of crazy, and he wants to punish him for the things that he did that he's not being punished for. However, when he finally does encounter Victor again, he sees how Victor has changed. It makes him very emotionally conflicted, and he returns home to Archbishop Frollo, who's not having it. Frollo has already been a little bit high on his own supply, having brought back an undead creature from the grave. He now is building his own new undead creature, who we call Little Brother, who is mindless and soulless and obeys all of his commands.
And played by Bruce Campbell.
I mean, it would probably just be his face capture for Bruce Campbell.
No, practical monsters.
Okay, practical monsters. We do try to do practical monsters. So Frollo tricks the Hunchback into believing that Victor is indeed still a monster, because in our revised version of the script that we change on the air, Frollo pretends, or rather stages, the death of Esmeralda, who does not actually die.
And Tiny Tim,
who did not die, and makes it appear as if Victor has killed Esmeralda. Quasi goes apeshit. There's a big Quasi versus Frankenstein fight, and Little Brother gets involved, and it turns out, basically, the Frollo's manipulations are revealed. Victor and Quasimodo are forced to kind of make at least a temporary alliance in order to end the threat of Little Brother. Little Brother is crushed under an exploding Notre Dame Cathedral. Dalton is snickering to themselves because they were the ones who required that I blew up Notre Dame Cathedral to make sure that my movie had a climactic third act.
Also, in our reshoots, at some point, Cassie and Esmeralda have a big escape adventure throughout Notre Dame.
Let's not love another swing at this one. It would be great. So at the end of this film, Victor and Quasi are no longer enemies, but Quasimodo doesn't really want to be around the guy who strangled him to death anymore. And so they go their separate ways. Cassie's house gets blown up, and they decide to go back to Switzerland.
Buy a rocket
launcher, and I stand by that 100%.
Oh, yeah,
fucking rocks.
It's great. Sam Raimi's going to put a rocket launcher in that movie, for sure.
And so in our revised version, Quasimodo and Esmeralda walk off together to start a new life. Victor, gets to give a tearful goodbye to his son and tells him that he loves him. And then Victor and Gwen reveals that she's, having gone through this entire other horrible ordeal at the same time, that she's leaving and she's going to go back to the United States.
Yes.
That is with 35 seconds left on the clock. We're better at this time around, Dalton.
Which is impressive because Hunchback was also our very first 2-part solo pitch.
Yeah, something that would never happen again.
Yeah. Yes, I think it is important to note that Esmeralda was saved during the reshoots because I realized that during our director's cut marathon, Esmeralda dies.
Yeah.
Because the director's cut is
not
just
in the
the
director's
script.
cut. Yeah.
Which means if you're just listening to the director's cut, then she reappears a few movies later as if it's George walking back into work on Monday morning as if he didn't quit on Friday.
So nice of you to give that dead girl a second chance.
Yeah, exactly. A little tease at our next guest.
Yes, Reb Brown. We have Reb Brown as our next.
Oh my God.
Could you imagine?
We get Reb Brown on here? He was in one of our...
We have a fan who is a huge Reb Brown fan.
Yes.
And so if we did get Reb Brown as a guest, it would be a huge deal.
What movie was Reb Brown in that we covered on this show?
On this show, Reb Brown is in...
That's right. Yeah, he's the bad guy in
No, sorry, we did
Bully.
not get Reb Brown to be our guest.
Oh,
but by
man.
now, you might already have some ideas, some wheels turning in your head as to who we might have gotten.
All right. So now we jump 2 years into the future. Not in real life, because we did these all a month apart. But from now on, all of our movies will take place after The Mummy Heaven's Gate. So we're 2 years in the future, and Evelyn is dead. And now it was my turn to write a musical. And so I did. I wrote
it fucking rocks, Dalton.
The Phantom of the Opera, Love Never Dies.
5 minutes are on the clock. Tell us about it, Dalton.
I'm actually going to sing about it.
Previously on?
Yeah, I mean, literally previously on. Can you imagine if I had composed a new song just recapping
honestly,
Love Never Dies?
If I had taken a train here instead of driving and I had access to my phone, the thought occurred to me that it would be really funny to do to open this episode with a version of Previously On about our show.
Yeah.
But alas, my hands were
previously on the continuing adventures of Dalton and Dylan, making a podcast, and they're both going mad.
So that's the cost of driving a car. I couldn't use my hands. I couldn't try and scribble out lyrics in that hour and a half.
The timer is going, so I have lost about
that's fine. You're going to make
seconds.
it. We don't need that all the time.
So, Carol and Jenny are newly married and living in Portland, Oregon, Carol's hometown. Jenny, in the last 2 years, has learned magic because she was so afraid of the time that her and Carol went to hell that she has become determined to protect Carol in whatever ways she can. However, her obsession with learning magic and becoming a master of it has made her very distant from her wife. Carol, meanwhile, is trying to continue her ghost-busting duties without telling Jenny. On one of her ghost-busting expeditions, she succeeds in sort of catching the ghost, but it turns out it's just Jack, and that Jenny knows that Carol has been ghost-busting and has sent Jack to sort of act as a ghost around town just to give Carol something to do that is safe. Carol is very upset about this, but before she can go and be mad at Jenny, she gets a letter inviting her and Jenny to the Bregenzer Festspiele, an opera festival in Austria, because there is a ghost haunting the opera. So they go out there with their assistant, Keith, and start investigating some ghostly goings-on, although Jenny doesn't know about it. Jenny is still kept in the dark. It turns out that a lot of people on the production are getting kidnapped, or disappearing at least. This one's actually kind of hard to recap. There's a lot of shit that happens in this one.
Yeah, there is. You'll get it. You got half your time.
Carol finds out that these have been happening not because of a ghost, but a serial killer nicknamed the Raven, who was thought dead but was revived by some unknown entity and has been kidnapping and torturing all of these cast members. Jenny now finds out about the plot and helps save Carol from the Raven's clutches. Carol and Jenny team up and put their heads together and figure out that the Raven is after something called the Black Bellarmine, a relic that will be at the premiere of the opera that is being staged. They are looking out for the Raven, but don't realize that the real threat has been right under their nose the whole time, because the lady who runs the opera festival, it turns out, is Carmilla, the first vampire, Dracula's older sister, who is one of the leaders of the vampire clans and has been looking for this Black Bellarmine. But more specifically, she was trying to lure Jenny out here because Jenny is the only one that knows a very specific spell. And that spell is how to resurrect the soul of Amenet. That's right, Amenet, the mummy from the 2017 Mummy film. So in a big final standoff, the Raven and Carmilla have Carol held hostage and tell Jenny to cast a spell to bring back Amenet's soul. She does it in order to save Carol, but little does she know that that spell has a big cost, which is the soul of someone she loves. And Carol dies. She falls onto the stage, and Carmilla absconds with Amenet's soul trapped in the Black Bellarmine, while Jenny gets real mad and kills the Raven super dead. At the end of the movie, Carol goes off into hiding somewhere.
Jenny does.
Yes, Carol's dead. Jenny goes off into hiding
Carol's
somewhere.
very in hiding right now.
Yes, Carol is hiding in hell where she's being tortured. Jenny goes off to parts unknown. In the mid-credit scene, we reveal that she has teamed up with Adelaide Van Helsing, last seen in Dracula Lives, our crazed Van Helsing descendant. And also there were songs.
Yes, kick-ass songs that you should listen to because they're extremely good.
And my EP comes out October 11th.
Yeah, be out pretty soon after you hear this.
I have 20 seconds left. I'm going to promote the EP. The single is out September 6th. If you're listening to this, it's just in about 2 weeks' time, I believe. You can get that on all streaming services. It's called Hell Breaks Loose, and the music video will be out with it. I might even play it on our next episode. And then the EP is out October 11th. And that's my time.
Great job. You didn't even think you were going to make it. You had time for a whole commercial.
There's a whole, I skimmed over a lot of shit in that one.
Well, sure, we didn't talk about Keith Heap.
We didn't talk about
America's
Keith Heap?
sweetheart.
Yeah, I hope we see Keith again.
Yeah. You know, it would be a shame if something terrible happened to him.
He's unemployed right now, I'm assuming.
I
He
guess,
lost
yeah.
his job as their assistant.
He's starting his own little Ghostbusters gang with Chris Hemsworth's character from Ghostbusters.
Yes, the Secretaries Alliance.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is Phantom of the Opera, Love Never Dies, which is a pretty lore-heavy episode, kicks off the informal Carmilla trilogy,
Yes.
with which Dalton concludes their half of Phase 3. So after that, knowing that I could not follow that in terms of pure delight and and fan service, I went in a different direction and decided to do a mostly, in fact, entirely standalone movie, still set in our universe, based on the old RKO movie Cat People that was later remade by Universal and Paul Schrader in the 80s. This movie is called Kill Your Darlings, and here's 5 minutes to tell you. You don't have to know anything about it. You really don't.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you a little bit about it anyway.
Yeah, it's part of the recap.
It's part of the It's honestly, I went back and re-listened to the season. This is still, I think, the pitch that is most personal to me. And funny that just as The Black Lagoon was the one that you wrote as a standalone movie, and you just said, oh, I'm going to make this into a real screenplay. Kill Your Darlings is the one I'm going to finish.
Oh, are you?
I am going to finish the script. I am
Nice.
going to make it into a full feature screenplay. Whether it's going to be my first finished solo screenplay, I don't know, because I do have another project on the back burner right now that I owe somebody some pages for. But yeah, Kill Your Darlings, I'm not done with that, not by a long shot. I'm gonna try and pursue that the way that you're pursuing Black Lagoon. So
Hell yeah.
so here's with all that said, here's what happens in it. Kill Your Darlings is set at a rural university in Pennsylvania. I went to one of those.
We do need to know the name of the university.
University.
Or the town.
It actually isn't named by name in that episode. So it's important that I say it is Selinsgrove University in Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania. Because
That's the one part you need to know.
that's the only part you need to know. It follows a writing student, a couple of writing students. One of them's name is Oliver, and he's sort of a wallflower. And he's having a hard time coping with the fact that everyone around him is having a lot of sex, and he is not. His roommate, Lewis, is a hound. So far as we know, a pretty ethical slut, involved in a lot of non-exclusive relationships and cool about it. Lewis's closest thing to like a primary partner, like his closest friend that he's sleeping with, would be Alice, who is very cool and also really good friends with Oliver. And the three of them are always hanging out, having a great time. And then Oliver gets kicked out because Lewis and Alice or somebody else are going to have sex. Turns out there's somebody else on campus in a similar predicament. There's a young woman named Irina who is an illustration student and a
Played by
comics member.
Kaylee Spaney.
Played by Kaylee Spaney, who's having a moment.
She's great.
Alien Romulus, real cool. She's also not shacked up with anybody, not paired up with anybody, and is often kicked out of her dorm room by her horny roommate. And these two crazy kids, they find each other. And they have a cute little chaste love affair. And one of the reasons why that love affair is so chaste is that Irina, for reasons that she will not disclose to Oliver, has really, really hard limits on her sexual activity. Basically, anytime things get really at all heavy, she's got to stop.
It's called vaginismus, and it is a serious problem.
I'm not looking it up. I'm laughing because it has the cadence of a joke. But I don't know what it is.
Statistically, we have some listeners out there with this affliction who are hopefully nodding along and being like, yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway, so turns out what's actually happening is that Irina has inherited a curse placed on all the women and female descendants of a village in Pennsylvania back in colonial times, where anytime any of those women gets sexually aroused to a certain extent, they will turn into a panther and kill everyone around them, including their own families and loved ones. This is a curse that was placed on them by a vindictive priest after his sons both fell for the same woman, and she kind of played them against each other, or at least that's how the legend says. We don't really know what happened. All we know is the curse is hell of real, and Irina learns more about it through a, let's say, less considerate cursed person played by Gillian Anderson, who just says, "Fuck it, I'll go around and fuck people and kill them when I'm done because this was a horrible crime that was done to me, and I don't have to feel bad about it." So after their relationship hits this predictable snag of Oliver not being as patient as he thinks that he can be with Irina's sexuality and her hangups, realizing that he's never going to get one of the things that he wants, or rather never get everything that he wants out of a relationship with this relationship. And Irina kind of clumsily and in a really kind of traumatizing way tries to give it to him. They both are trying their best. It's awful. They break up. But then when Oliver finds solace in the arms of Alice, Irina goes postal in a heel turn I need to set up better, and turns into and starts hunting all of their friends, getting frisky, and then getting very bitey and killing people. And so, but before
not in a fun way.
No. I mean, Lewis is having fun for a little bit of it.
Yeah.
Then definitely not. We have the iconic pool scene from Cat People. And then finally, before Irina can fuck and slaughter a really guilt-ridden Oliver, Alice comes to the rescue and knocks out Irina with a shovel. And that's the climax of my film. We're all laughing about it. So I love that script. I can't wait to expand it much further, and I will extract it from our dark universe, which will not be difficult.
Yes.
And I will still, so far as I'm concerned, I'm still writing it as an adaptation of Cat People.
Okay.
Until someone tells me that I have to try not to do that. And honestly, if it's an idea that I can't admit that it was fucking too late, it's out there. I'd have to pull a Stephanie Meyer about it, and not Stephanie Meyer. Who's the one who wrote the fan fiction around Stephanie Meyer? And the
E.L. James.
E.L. James, yes, whose famous and extremely profitable series of romance novels, absolutely nobody can even plausibly deny, began as Twilight fan fiction. So
it stands for Everybody Loves James.
Everybody loves James, which I don't even think is true.
Ladies love cool
James, but this isn't Cool James. This is just James. Less cool. Anyway, that's Kill Your Darlings.
That's Kill Your Darlings.
Not my best script by a long shot, but sort of my personal favorite.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff in there. It just needs some structural work.
Yeah, I need to spend more than, a couple of weeks on it. Dalton, what did you do after that?
What the fuck did I do after that? Oh,
you continued the Carmilla trilogy.
I continued the Carmilla trilogy with our first standalone Invisible Man sequel.
I'm going to put standalone in some quotes here.
Why? It's an Invisible Man sequel.
It is, but it's also part 2 in the Carmilla trilogy.
Yes, but Jack takes front and center stage. Let's see if I can remember what the fuck happens in this one.
Are you ready? 5 minutes on the clock.
I'm going to try.
Okay, go.
The Invisible Man's revenge starts with Jack has built a little restaurant empire called the Invisible Chef that mostly sells frozen dinners. But he is opening up a restaurant in his hometown of Portland. I forgot to mention that in Love Never Dies, he has a bad end of his relationship with Carol because she's mad at him because of the ghost busting thing. And then he gets the word that she has died. He goes to her funeral, and is very depressed and has a little pep talk from his little nibbling Hunter Marin, not by blood, and goes to a speed dating event where he is enraptured by a beautiful woman, Maria Zaleska, who listeners may recognize as Dracula's daughter from one of our non-canon pitch episodes, played by Janelle Monáe. She is out to kill Carmilla, and she knows that Jack's friend was killed by Carmilla, so she's like, hey, team up with me. We can go take her down. They find out that Carmilla has been holing up in Dracula's old castle, doing some kind of experiment on how to put Amenette's soul back in her body. They go to Dracula's castle, and Maria betrays Jack and tries to get him killed by vampires while she sneaks around, but Jack survives and actually rescues Maria from Carmilla's number 2. I don't remember her name at this point, but played by Catherine Newton.
I don't remember either. Sorry.
Emma, I think. I believe
Isn't
it was
Emma the other one?
Maybe Emma's the other one.
Doesn't
You're
matter.
right.
Keep
Doesn't
going.
matter. So now Maria and Jack are on the same side. Jack is running around and discovers that these experiments where they're trying to put a soul in someone's body, they are using gorillas as test subjects. And they're also using vampire souls as the test souls. So now we have a castle filled with hyper-intelligent apes with the souls of vampires. And they are going to war with the lady vampires of Carmilla's army. And so we get a big chaotic action sequence where Jack and Maria are battling gorillas and also vampires. And at the end of it, Jack and Maria escape, but so does Carmilla. And so does one gorilla who is filled with the soul of Walton Goggins, a.k.a. whatever his name
Dudley
is.
Hall.
Dudley Hall from my first original Invisible Man movie. I'm losing it. This is too much talking. The Original Man is what I was calling him. I have a poster of him right next to me. Anyway, they chase Carmilla to Dubai, where she's going to do something. Who cares? They're finding Amenette's tomb. They need to get Amenette's body now. They track her down, and they are about to kill Carmilla when suddenly Dudley appears as a gorilla and accidentally takes a serum that makes him grow to the size of a kaiju, and he becomes our King Kong. Jack, in order to rescue Maria, he grabs Maria and is carrying her like Fey-Ray in King Kong.
Going up the tallest building in the world.
Yep, the Burj Khalifa. Jack, in order to battle him, takes the same serum, which turns him giant and also turns him visible. So we have a gigantic nude John C. Reilly fighting a King Kong with the voice of Walton Goggins throughout Dubai. They climb to the top of the Burj Khalifa. Maria and Jack are able to both team up to get the gorilla to fall to his death. And at the end, Maria and Jack kiss. Also, they fucked at one point. I skipped that part, but they did have sex. And Jack and Maria kind of ride off in the sunset together. They did not end up killing Carmilla. They did not get Amenette's body back, but they do have each other. And it's a nice, happy ending. And things will stay happy.
Yep, nothing bad ever happened again.
Nothing bad ever happened again. Oh, and in the post-credit scene, we reveal that Carmilla is also in possession of the body of Elsa Falk, a.k.a. Cassie's older sister and our ostensible bride of Frankenstein.
I'd forgotten about that.
Yes, that does happen in the post-credits.
I mean, it's kind of hard to forget. You have Dudley Kong,
yes,
which I think was a really great twist to throw at our audience and at me. Love Dudley Kong.
Love Dudley Kong.
Gotta say that although I will be taking the piss a little bit at the way that the show became very episodic in a way that I think is maybe like even more than the MCU gets. Made possible because of the actual format of our show versus the metagame that we're playing. That I don't think anybody who loved The Invisible Man would be disappointed by The Invisible Man's Revenge. That's
very good to hear, because The Invisible Man was a hard act to follow up.
Yeah, I mean, that you really do the comedy sequel thing very well, where you take the comedy premise and you push it somewhere, you literally make it bigger, but you take other elements of that, like he fights vampires in that. He fights vampire apes in this one, as well as vampires. We have the King Kong thing. It's a love story where the first one was it had a romance, but the romance didn't go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
It is
No, the romance in the first one was between Jack and Nick.
kind of is, yeah.
Yeah.
And that does go somewhere. So where it goes is up to you,
Up to the
listener.
fans.
Yes. But it's I think it's really fun. And the only
Thank you.
knock I have against it is like, all right, well, it's still like part 2 of a different series of movies.
But after Death's Door, we're going to have a lot of standalone
Yes,
movies.
we are.
And
that is,
yeah.
again, sort of the point of doing the shared universe. It's just that even in the time since we started this experiment, I have gotten so much meaner about shared universes
Mhm.
where like I'm really like, they still all have to be movies, right? Like I got like Fast 10, half a movie at best.
Yeah.
At best. Wolverine and Deadpool is, to me, fucking wretched.
Sorry, it's Deadpool and Wolverine, actually. Deadpool
Not in
gets
my
top
heart.
billing.
Not in my heart. Wolverine is the one who, the performance that I like. And
I haven't
that's
seen
the-
it yet. I still need to.
The only thing in the movie I like, basically, is
Yeah.
I think that Hugh Jackman is incapable of doing a shit job.
Yeah.
And he does a good job. Anyway, but it's the sort of thing where it's like, they still have to be, but in truth, if the story of The Invisible Man's Revenge is about Jack finding love again.
Mhm.
And that story gets resolved in a very satisfactory way with
Yes.
a killer climax because a giant gorilla that has the soul of a vampire and the voice of Walton Goggins climbs the Burj Khalifa holding Janelle Monáe in his paw.
Yeah,
So I think we're good. I
good.
think we're good.
thank you. And we only have 2 movies left to recap.
Yes.
So,
So the next one I did it's called Return to the Black Lagoon, and it was my attempt to do a sequel to Dalton's most personal and best, and perhaps most critically acclaimed pitch, The
Mhm.
Black Lagoon. I had to, I'll start the clock. So as was pointed out, it's not something that I meant to do, but it is kind of what happened. But as was pointed out by somebody on the Discord, I basically did an Aliens to your Alien.
yes.
I took the quiet horror premise and I did a sort of military action sci-fi.
Yes, it is Alien and Aliens. Absolutely.
Yes, but you know what? That's, I think, the only way I could have done it.
Sure,
Just like
yeah.
the only way James Cameron could have done Alien.
I think it works.
Yeah. So in this story, Hunter, who has been traveling the world as an agent of Prodigium, protecting the Black Lagoon, a way station between life and death, from being, I guess, really broken and allowing the deadly creature inside to escape and kill people. They arrive on a beach one day where the lagoon appears, but not the way it usually does. It appears as a tunnel underneath the ocean. And Hunter does not want to go in there and find out because Hunter has not actually been to or seen the lagoon since they accepted themselves and sort of came out as non-binary, dealt with their mental health, and found a new purpose for themselves outside of the hostile conditions into which they were born. However, alongside a group of characters, including a high-ranking Prodigium officer named Demi Lavelle. Sorry. Lavelle. I renamed her during writing.
Okay.
Demi Lavelle, played by Lucy Lawless, and a character based on the protagonist the Firestarter from Firestarter, who is either a little girl or a very large, handsome Indian man.
Schrodinger's Firestarter.
Yes, doesn't matter because that character dies.
Mhm.
Stephen Root,
Yes.
and a character who does survive, named Charisse Auberjonois, and is another sort of canon immigrant from a guest pitch.
Mhm.
They all go into this tunnel and find the Black Lagoon and discover that that's not even important. What happens inside is that they are exploring the lagoon. The ferryman, the creature in the Black Lagoon, kills a bunch of them. And in the end, what's really kind of this is all about is the creature. See, I don't even want to explain it because I think
what did happen down there, Dylan?
It's ambiguous. I gotta keep. I don't want to spoil the mystery of it. I'll give you just the facts of what
Mhm.
happens.
Yes.
Hunter confronts themselves
Mhm.
in the lagoon and has to confront the fact that just leaving their old life behind is not enough to completely heal all the wounds that they've gone through in their life. And that what they have to do is to leave the lagoon for a while and go and reunite with their mother and reconcile that relationship because they haven't seen each other in, I think, 6 years at this point.
Yeah.
Because the Black Lagoon takes place earlier in our chronology.
Mhm.
Meanwhile, they pass on the scale that gives them access to, it lets them follow the lagoon to Lucy Lawless's character, to Demi Lavelle.
Lavelle.
Demi Lavelle.
You can remember because it's like the barber of Lavelle.
Yes. Motherfucker, who is dealing with her own sort of difficulty and proximity to death, and that she blames herself for putting work ahead of her family and not being there to hold her son's hand as he died of an illness because she was off dealing with stuff for Prodigium. So Hunter goes to try and put their life back together and leaves Lagoon in the care of this older woman with her own baggage. And in a post-credit scene, we learn that through Lavelle, the ferryman has given Hunter a gift, a little bag full of artifacts, little gems and runes and stones and stuff, which we then later / previously see Hunter placing on the eyes of Carol Lemley before she's buried.
This is important.
We do not know what they do.
Hunter says they are for protection.
They're for protection. And so they're introduced in The Invisible Man's Revenge at the funeral. And then I tell you where they come from in Return to the Black Lagoon. And other than that,
that's all we know.
You know nothing. Okay, I did it.
That's it.
Yeah.
Great episode.
Thank you.
Very Aliens to Alien. I think that was the perfect way to describe it. And now we just have one film left before you're all caught up. And this one's going to be a doozy to recap as well.
Yeah.
And then we're going to take a little break and you will hear all the Dracula episodes. You can catch up on what that crazy guy's been up to.
Yeah, because we don't have to recap that
hell.
one for you. We'll just play you the whole damn thing.
Play you the whole damn thing.
All at once.
It's funny, kind of the variation in times. Like some of those post credits were 2.5 minutes long, and some of them were 6 minutes long. And of course, if it was a real movie, they probably would have to be 45 seconds long. No, they could go a little longer, but
I mean, maybe one of them would be like a special digital short that debuts on Peacock or YouTube or
a
something.
Dark Universe digital short directed by Andy Samberg. Sorry, Akiva.
Yes, I will put 5 minutes on the clock. Tell us about the conclusion to the Carmilla trilogy and kind of sort of a Dark Legion movie that you snuck in there without consulting me. This is Van Helsing.
I consulted you.
You consulted me.
And you're going to get your revenge.
I am going to get my revenge. That's true.
Okay. So Jenny and Adelaide, we saw them team up at the end of Love Never Dies. Now we catch up with them. They are trying to stop Carmilla from resurrecting Aminet, but they're too late. Carmilla brings Aminet back from the dead. They retreat because they don't have the manpower to stop them, and they run into Jack and Maria, and they decide to all join up and try to defeat Carmilla together. Meanwhile, now that Aminet's awake, she reestablishes her connection to Nick Morton, who is now living with Gwen in the American West on the reservation, along with Charlie, Gwen's girlfriend. Nick wakes up knowing that Aminet is back and teams up with Gwen to try to stop her. Along the way, they don't pick up anyone yet. Maria and Jack and Jenny and Adelaide go to recruit Victor Frankenstein, which they do successfully, and all of them go off to stop Carmilla and Aminet. They don't want to get Nick because they are worried Nick will be corrupted by Aminet. Nick and Gwen show up at the Frankenstein house just after the rest of the crew, and Cassie's like, oh, Victor went with Adelaide, and Nick's like, Adelaide is a bad lady. We have to stop them. So Cassie decides to come along and brings Quasimodo along for the ride too. Then there is a big action set piece that I won't explain in detail, but what is the gist of it? We figure out there's a pocket lagoon in a Prodigium headquarters. Nick's team rescues Elsa and restores her soul to her. And
that's the Bride of Frankenstein / Cassie's sister
that tried to kill her. So now Cassie and Elsa are friends again. What else happens down there? Set gets taken over by Aminet and fights Gwen. That's like,
I think everything underground that's it.
Yeah, that's basically it. Meanwhile, Adelaide and Jenny have gone to a mall in London to try to retrieve the dagger of Set, last seen in The Mummy 2017. They fail. Aminet gets it back, which allows her to control Nick. And Adelaide kills a lot of people and tries to kill even more in the process, including almost killing Jenny. But now that Aminet has the dagger of Set, Adelaide decides that the only thing left to do is to kill Nick Morton, because if Aminet reunites with Set, the world will end. And so she convinces the rest of the Legion that Nick needs to die. There is a big Civil War type fight at Adelaide's windmill headquarters in England that ends with Victor Frankenstein tragically dying in Cassie's arms and in a burning windmill.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that Adelaide kills.
Yes, Adelaide kills Victor. And this is after Victor had decided to turn on Adelaide because he didn't want to kill his friend Nick. So Victor dies. Adelaide and Jenny. Oh, and then Nick gets kidnapped by. There's so many characters in this fucking movie.
Yeah.
If you can't follow this one, that's fine.
I mean, it's a fun episode. You should listen to it. But it is, 2 episodes.
Yes, and there's like 20 fucking characters. Nick gets kidnapped by Aminette and Carmilla, right. They are pursued by Jenny and Adelaide. They meet in Egypt. I think Egypt? No, Iraq.
Yeah.
From The Mummy 2017. Oh, boy. I'm going to take a 6-second break to just kind of catch my breath and catch my brain up. Essentially, Aminette tries to reunite with Set, but Nick is resisting too hard because he's a good man. And so Aminette realizes that Set needs to be in someone else's body, someone who is a monster. And so Aminette removes Set from Nick's body and implants it in Adelaide. So now Adelaide is the host of Set. Nick is mortal. Adelaide and Aminette have a gay kiss together because now they are wedded again. And Set kills Carmilla. As a token of appreciation for bringing them back together. So at the end of the movie, Victor is dead. Nick is mortal. Adelaide and Aminette are now our big bads. They are determined to open death's door, and the Legion is in shambles because they were all just fighting each other and trying to kill each other. Is that everything?
I think that's everything. I can't think of anything else. That is, yeah. I mean, if it sounded like, as just there's a lot that happens.
A lot happens.
It ended up being a 2-part episode of our show. It's massive. And I feel like I've been taking the piss out of you more often today than other times. Maybe because I'm tired. Maybe I'm cranky. Okay. But I'm not actually. We did in fact discuss that you basically be doing like a Civil War style crossover thing. I think that I was maybe not prepared for how much it would feel like a season finale. Like it wraps up a lot from not just the Carmilla trilogy, but also stuff from like House of Frankenstein.
Yeah.
And you sort of make it kind of, you end it with a button that calls back to The Mummy, right? So that, I think that what's irksome to me, irks me slightly, is that I think that it feels like the next Dark Legion movie. It feels like Dark Legion 3, not just because of who's in it, but because of the way it feels like it's the next Dark Legion movie in terms of where we're progressing stuff. But that's okay, because that just means we get an extra Dark Legion movie.
I also wasn't actually planning on resolving Frankenstein stuff in it. It was just Elsa was the dangling thread that I wanted to clear off the board before Death's Door because I knew we weren't going to have room for her in Death's Door.
Right.
And the only way to involve Elsa and make it make sense for it to happen was to make it more about Cassie and Victor.
And Cassie needed the attention, frankly. We have not been giving Cassie the love that she deserves.
Yes. And we also knew that Victor needed to die.
And I say we, and that's mostly been a me problem. You resolved that problem.
Yeah, I needed to give Cassie more time, and I need to get Elsa off the board, and we needed to kill Victor. So that kind of naturally just ended up being, I had to use the things from Hunchback, and that had come into play. But now we are writing a Dark Legion, and I will say that given our plans for Death's Door, I think it's helpful to have a lot of that stuff resolved.
Yeah, because we have a lot to do. And there's not like there was anything in Van Helsing where it's like, shit, I would have liked to get to write some of that, or I want to do something differently, or blah, blah, blah. It's just like, oh, damn, that went further into the story than I expected.
Yeah. But now our table's cleared for Death's Door.
Yeah.
And it also means that for people, hypothetical movie watchers who just see the Avengers movies, there's less baggage from the individual films. Like, characters have died.
Yes.
For sure.
But we have wrapped up most of the threads that were specifically like new characters that were introduced in Phase 3. We have Maria.
We have Maria.
But yeah, you're right. In terms of those themes have sort of been tied up in a certain way, and now we can kind of pick up and do what is kind of sort of Phase 4.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
It's enough goddamn movies.
Yeah, I mean, now that we have 5 intermediary movies plus a holiday special, it's basically as long, that's longer than Phase 1.
Do you want to just call it Phase 4?
Should we call it phase 4?
I think maybe we should just call it phase 4.
Are we deciding this right now on the air? This is phase 4. We're wrapping up phase 3.
I think
month?
that we should maybe consider that Death's Door is the end of phase 3, and then we are doing. I don't know. We don't have to decide this year.
Phase 3.5.
Oh God! I mean, because the season, I organize for Apple Podcasts. I organize the show into seasons because they like me to do that. It makes it more navigable, right? And we are now, I believe, this is going to be like season 3, episode 21. Something like that.
We should maybe clear the board.
We should maybe clear the board and have it be, this should be the beginning of season 4, maybe, because people do sometimes look at the top of the season and hit play. This would be a good place to start.
But then we have a Dark Legion at the top of it. That's inconsistent with our previous. This is an off-the-air conversation.
Okay, all right. You guys will know if we'll
look at your podcatcher.
We'll clarify it by the time Dark Legion 3 comes out.
But we are now going to go to a break. When we come back, we are going to launch straight into the Dracula post-credits. So you're going to hear the post-credits as we read them on air, so you can hear the whole Dracula story in one big chunk.
Then we'll talk about that a little bit, but probably not much.
Yeah, and then we'll come back afterwards to let you know what we're doing in 2 weeks for our guest episode and leave you on a nice word before we go.
Some really exciting news.
Yes. We love you all. We're going to head to a break and get some AC, and we'll see you in a minute. How did you enjoy Don't Breathe today, speaking of Fede Alvarez? It seemed like you were kind of meh on it.
Yeah, medium.
You didn't like the turkey baster of cum? The cum baster?
We've talked in the past on one of our shows, one or the other, about how there's just more cum in movies now and that we're fine with it, or even for it. But this movie keeps shifting into new gears, seemingly flaming out and then springing back to life like Michael Myers over and over again. Like The Shape, it comes back. Each time it comes back, it's a little bit dumber. I liked playing the game of, okay, wait, no, is Dylan Minnette gonna survive this movie?
No.
That's a dude. He's our Sean Bean. He fucking dies in everything. Even one of the first things I saw him in was this short-lived NBC drama called Awake with Jason Isaacs. And the premise of Awake is that this guy, he gets in this car accident with his wife and his son. And he wakes up and his wife has died. Then he goes and he's like dealing with the trauma of that and trying to help his son through that tragedy. He falls asleep and then immediately wakes up right where he woke up last time, except for in this universe, his son has died. And he's dealing with it with his wife. And you have this red universe and this blue universe that are going concurrently. And so even in the show where he's a regular, he dies in the first episode.
Post-credits scene. The image is blurry, but we can tell that we're looking at a grand set of double doors made of black wood, reinforced with iron. A hand comes into view from the edge of the screen, setting down a white blur in front of the camera, a teacup and saucer. A muffled voice speaks.
Time for your medicine, master.
The camera reverses to reveal that we have been inhabiting the POV of Count Dracula, played as always by Mads Mikkelsen. But he looks terrible. His hair is thin, barely covering his scalp. He's rail thin, his cheeks sagging on his face. Deep bags hang from his unfocused eyes. He's sitting at the dinner table in Castle Dracula, pushed up to its edge in a wheelchair. The hand holding the teacup belongs to Renfield, played by Barry Cohen.
You must eat, master. You need your strength.
Renfield dips down and kisses Dracula on the top of his head, lingering and breathing in Dracula's scent deeply. Dracula's jaw clenches, his lip curls, but he's too weak to do anything. Renfield grabs a spoonful of mashed potatoes and guides it into Dracula's mouth, humming a little tune as he does so. Dracula yanks his head away, but Renfield grabs him by the jaw and shoves the spoon in. After he's swallowed, Renfield gently scoops a messy bit of potato off of Dracula's lips and puts it in his own mouth.
That's it, master. I know you haven't been feeling well, and it's important you stay fed. We have another long night ahead of us.
As he says this last bit, he runs his still wet fingers down Dracula's jawline. Dracula's face sets, and with a burst of effort, he grabs Renfield's wrist and pulls him close, grabbing at his neck with his other hand. But he's too weak. The two of them struggle for a moment, and Dracula's wheelchair topples sideways, spilling him out onto the dining room floor along with his dinner. The plate shatters in front of his face. Renfield gets to his feet and stands over him, unbuckling his belt.
Can't wait for tonight then, eh, Master? Impatient for the rough stuff?
Dracula feebly grasps for a shard of plate on the floor.
Well, as your humble servant, I'm happy to oblige.
Dracula grabs the plate fragment and jams it into his own throat, cutting it wide and bleeding out on the wooden boards. Renfield looks shocked, and then grins.
Pathetic. The great Count Dracula reduced to the coward's way out.
A strong wind starts to blow in the room, carrying with it tufts of powdery snow. Renfield leans down into Dracula's face.
But there is no way out, Master. Not from here. Not anymore.
Renfield begins to laugh, a giggle at first, but then growing maniacal. Dracula turns his head toward the door. It's standing wide open, but instead of leading to the castle's foyer, it opens on a snowy cave. A man sits on a rock with his back to Dracula, stoking a fire. Dracula tries to yell to the man, but he can only rasp quietly. Master, please. Renfield's laughter grows deafening. The doors slam closed, and the screen goes black. Dracula will return.
Post-credits scene. A man sprints breathlessly through a scorched forest. He wears loose white finery, which stands in stark contrast to the black, burnt remains of once mighty trees. He can run, but he can't hide. He's barefoot, and the splinters and brambles below pierce his skin, painting the hem of his clothes red with his blood. We hear the sound of an arrow whistling through the air, and it strikes the running man in the back. We cut to a metal broadhead stabbing through his shoulder, and a rack focus reveals the man's face, that of Dracula, played by Mads Mikkelsen. Dracula stumbles and winces, but keeps running. We hear more arrows flying, and one strikes a charred, jagged tree trunk ahead of Dracula. As he runs past, the tree bleeds from its wound. Dracula looks back over his shoulder for a moment, but is unable to catch a glimpse of his pursuers. His ankle catches on a root, and he hurtles headfirst into dried twigs and black thorns. With effort, he turns onto his back, wincing as the arrow bends and snaps under his weight. We take his point of view now as he gazes up at the red-orange sky and the black spires of the burnt forest. A shadow comes over him. It's a figure holding a spent crossbow. We've seen her somewhere before. It's Mina Harker, or rather Mina Van Helsing, played by Anna Friel. Pathetic. He's not even trying anymore. Mina is joined by her husband, Abraham Van Helsing, played by Hugh Dancy, holding a crossbow of his own.
It's not spoiling the fun too much, I hope.
I'm still game if you are. Dracula avoids even looking at them. Better to pretend he's not here at all.
Of course. What else is there to do after all? Grandfather, would you do the honors?
A third figure now stands over Dracula. It's Dr. Atticus Van Helsing, played by Sam Neill, who holds a long wooden stake in one hand and an arcane hammer in the other. I'd be only too happy to. Atticus kneels over the dead-eyed Dracula, who flails instinctively as the old man centers the stake over his heart and pounds it into his chest with the hammer. Dracula screams in pain, then goes limp. Atticus rises to his feet, and the trio walks away from Dracula's body. As we pull back, we see the stake is growing out of Dracula's chest. It crackles and glows like a log in a fireplace, becoming another black, dead tree. The three Van Helsings join a half-dozen other armed figures in the vast forest. We hear Atticus's voice. Shall we go again? Cut to black.
Post-credits scene.
Not today, Dracula. Today we give you a gift. The gift of life.
We're in the dungeon of Dracula's castle. Dracula, played by Mads Mikkelsen, is on his knees, looking healthier than we've seen him recently, looking like his vampire self. Nick Morton towers over him, but in his final Set meets Osiris form from the end of House of Dracula. He's in full mummy mode, 12 feet tall with 4 irises in each eye. Mummy Nick holds his hands out, and bandages extend from them, wrapping around Dracula. When he's released, he's not just human, he's emaciated, drained of energy, just skin and bones. He collapses to the ground. Dracula looks up to see the black iron door of death standing tall between him and Nick, just a few feet away, but sealed shut. He reaches for it, and as he does, a wind whips through the dungeon, fluttering his thin hair.
Wait, someone is here. Who is it? Show yourself, spirit!
The dungeon suddenly goes dark, and Mummy Nick freezes in place. Through the shadows, a faint outline of a face appears. A face that looks kind of like Danhausen, but like scarier. It's the demon, Pazuzu. Sorry to interrupt. Word got around that we had a very special guest with us down here, and I had to come see for myself.
Wait, help me, please.
Why would I do that? It's much more fun to see you lie in your own piss for all eternity.
I'll do anything. Please, return me to life.
I can't do that. You're damned, Dracula. I don't even know if you have a body up there for me to put you back into.
Then just open the door. That's all I ask. Open the door.
And what will I get in return? Dracula's eyes narrow. He can always find the strength to hate.
Van Helsing. Adelaide Van Helsing.
You're going to have to offer me more than a soul you planned on taking anyway. Dracula looks at Mummy Nick, standing tall and frozen beyond the door.
Nick Morton, the host of Set.
You need to think bigger, Count. I don't even get up in the morning for 2 measly human souls. Dracula's eyes roll in his head and he licks his chapped lips. He's desperate.
Set! I'll bring you Set!
Pazuzu pauses. Not possible. He is the ruler of this place.
Not when I'm done with him. I will subjugate him, and you will rule over him.
Pazuzu grins. At the very least, this will be fun to watch. All 3. Van Helsing, Morton, Set. I will open the door, but you still have to find your way back to the land of the living. If you do, and you bring me all of their souls, your reward will be your immortality returned.
You told me you couldn't do that.
And you believed me. But if you fail, Count Dracula, your pain will not end.
Thank you. Oh, thank you, Spirit.
But Pazuzu is gone. The room has lightened again, but Nick is still frozen. There's a loud clank, and Death's door opens just a crack. Dracula reaches out a weak hand, and with all his might, he's able to push the door wide. He walks through. He finds himself on a black stone cliff overlooking an endless sea of fire. The wind starts to howl, and we slowly realize that it's not wind at all, but the sound of millions of screams swelling all around him. It crescendos, and we cut to black.
We cut from black to a stone tower as it explodes from within, torn apart by a gunpowder explosion. It collapses into rubble, and we pull back to see a strange, burning city. There is no consistency to its architecture. Modern skyscrapers stand alongside medieval watchtowers. The neon light of a casino illuminates a battle flag on an ancient parapet. Beneath the windswept flag stands a lone figure. He leans forward against the edge of his battlement, gritting his teeth. It's Ahul, played by Joe Taslim, who watches helplessly as his city burns. If anyone forgot, Ahul is Dracula's brother from Indonesia. A hatch behind Ahul bursts open and a vicious mob, citizens, not soldiers based on their garb, rushes Ahul and tears at him with knives, teeth, and nails. If you freeze frame, you'll find Dion, the woman who Ahul hypnotizes and drains, and Dracula lives among them. Ahul recoils as a reflex, but does not appear surprised. He does not protest or fight back as the crowd lifts his bloodied body, hoists him over the tower's edge, and drops him to his death. We see his body land on a pike, now one of hundreds of Ahuls skewered at the tower's base. We pan up to find Ahul, once again alone at the tower's peak, looking down at his many remains. A voice behind him speaks. This is your hell? Ahul turns to see Dracula standing behind him, still human, still missing an arm, but otherwise looking better than we've seen him in a while.
I suppose it looks more like heaven to you. Suffering, destruction.
On the contrary, I'm frankly shocked that the gods of death would grant you such a flattering form of flagellation.
Flattering?
The fuming masses rising up against you, burning their own world to the ground, dooming themselves by refusing your benevolent rule, and you forced to watch, to accept their judgment, the shame of your failure to save the world. It's practically a monument to your self-importance. Ahul's eyes narrow.
You're not an apparition. It's really you. How?
I've been granted wandering privileges by one of hell's lower demons. I'm on a quest.
And, once again, you've stopped to ask me for directions.
Perhaps I simply wish to visit my baby brother.
Just tell me what you want and leave me to my eternal torment.
In the distance, another tower crumbles. We hear the sound of screams, both pained and victorious. In order to arrange my travel visa, it was necessary to make a few lofty promises. Promises I could certainly fulfill on my own under ordinary circumstances, but given my present condition, I may require some additional muscle.
And you expect me to fight for you?
Gods, no, Ahul. Again, you flatter yourself. There's practically no one who's ever lived who can boast the experience I need. I'm looking for someone with intimate knowledge of our jailer, and, perhaps, a grudge of her own. I'm looking for Aminet. Cut to black.
Post-credit scene. Rajat, capital city of the Kingdom of Morocco. The rain pours as hard as a monsoon. The camera slowly advances through the darkness to approach an upscale modern apartment building. But when we cut to the interior, it's anything but modern. A fire roars in an ornate fireplace, and the walls are decorated with ancient tapestries and shelves holding talismans and artifacts. The camera is mounted in the middle of a large round table in the center of the room and spins slowly to reveal the assemblage of guests. All the while, a woman's voice speaks, reciting an incantation in an unknown tongue. It appears to be a local family, dressed in traditional Moroccan garb, all holding hands, their faces lit by the flickering fire. The older members of the family surround a younger man, around 19 years old, who looks more nervous than anyone else. The camera continues to spin to reveal the woman sitting opposite the young man, a middle-aged woman played by Naomi Harris, whom viewers may recognize as Victoire from Dracula Lives.
Yay!
It has been her voice that we've heard reciting the incantation. She stops, and the room is quiet for a moment. Ah, yes. I can feel him. There's a powerful spirit presence here. The boy's mother smiles and squeezes her son's hand. Sharif! Are you there, Sharif? Your descendant is here and requires your counsel. A sudden wind blows through the room. Thunder rattles the windows so strongly that they shatter. The curtains blow inwards with the rain, and the royal family shrieks. Victoire opens her mouth, but the voice that comes out is not her own.
Performing parlor tricks for snot-nosed brats, Victoire? I see I'm not the only one who has taken a steep fall from grace.
The family looks around, bewildered. The father asks,
Was that him? The Sharif?
Victoire opens her eyes and returns to herself, flustered. You must all go. Now, please.
Go? We paid for your services, witch!
Victoire stands and shouts at him with fire in her eyes. Leave! The family stands as well. How dare you speak to the Sultan that way? You forget yourself, Victoire. Victoire has had enough. With a wave of her hand, the door swings open and a mighty wind begins to suck the family towards the opening. They try to fight against it, but it's no use, and the door slams shut the second they've passed through it. Victoire gathers herself and sits back down in the dark room. Even in death, you're a pain in my ass, Vladimir. This better be worth the money you've just cost me. Cut to hell. We are in the Sa Netjer, or mummy preparation room, of Pharaoh Meneptah. The pharaoh stands frozen over an empty sarcophagus. Inside the sarcophagus is a pile of bandages in the shape of a body, as if the person inside vanished after being wrapped. At the head and foot of the sarcophagus stand two Egyptian priests, also frozen, looking like they were holding down the shoulders and feet of the missing person. The pharaoh is pouring out a jar of what looks to be liquid mercury, which is similarly suspended in time, mid-pour. Next to this tableau stands Dracula, played by Mads Mikkelsen. On his knees in front of him is his brother, Ahul. The back of Ahul's skull has been cracked and torn out, leaving a crater. Dracula holds a metal scoop in one hand, used for organ removal. His other hand is inside Ahul's skull, soaked in blood up to his wrist, gripping and working the gray matter inside. Ahul's face is lifeless, his jaw and eyes wide open. Light shines out of them, casting an image on the wall of the chamber, a view of Victoire's apartment from her own POV.
What do you know of Aminet, Victoire?
Intercut between Victoire and her apartment and Dracula in Aminet's hell. No, dear, you first. How is it that you're talking to me instead of enduring eternal torment?
I made another deal with the demon Pazuzu. He gave me the first breath of freedom. Now it's up to me to claw my way to fresh air. In exchange, I owe him the souls of Nick Morton, Adelaide Van Helsing, and Set himself.
Victoire laughs. Set? It seems those fangs have finally bitten off more than even you can chew.
I was hoping Princess Amenet may be of use in my quest, but her hell appears to be empty. What have you heard?
Oh, Vlad. I'm sorry to say your princess is in another castle.
Speak plainly, woman.
Let's just say that Amenet seems to be extremely popular with your family tree right now. Dracula curls his lip and squeezes his fist harder inside Ahul's skull. A soft groan escapes from Ahul's open mouth.
Carmilla. I'll have her head for this. It's been long overdue anyway.
Victoire stands and looks out her window, hearing something outside. Well, in that case, you may want to hurry back home, my dear. Victoire watches out the window as a car parks in front of the apartment building. 2 people step out of the car into the pouring rain. One is a woman whose face is obscured by her hat. She's helped out of the car by a man whose hat appears to float a foot above the collar of his coat. He holds an umbrella in one invisible hand. I have a feeling the party's about to get started, and you're not going to want to be late. Cut to black.
Post-credit scene. We're at Carol's wake. It's late, and a lot of the mourners have already gone home. If the mood had ever been lively, it's dead now. Nick, Jack, Victor, and Gwen sit at a table together, each nursing a drink. After a long silence, Gwen says, "You think it'd get easier, with all the practice we've had." Victor puts a hand on Gwen's shoulder.
I have lived long enough to know it never gets easier.
Nick raises his glass, trying to put on a brave face for the team and not doing a very good job.
Here's to everyone who should be here with us.
Jack sniffles and adds, "To Carol." They go around the table clockwise, each adding to the toast.
To Larry.
Gwen smiles up at Victor, tears in her eyes. To Jekyll. And finally, back to Nick.
To Evelyn.
They clink their glasses and finish their drinks. A voice cuts through the somber moment, unacknowledged by anyone.
Ah!
A fist hurtles toward the back of Nick's head, then phases right through it. The fist belongs to a dark-haired man whose face we don't yet see. The momentum of his punch carries him forward, and he stumbles through the space occupied by the Dark Legion's table. He falls to his knees and puts his head in his hands.
Please, I'm fucking begging you, please!
He turns back to look at the table, at us, and screams,
Somebody say my name!
We are now looking into the mad, bloodshot eyes of Sergeant Chris Vale, portrayed by Jake Johnson.
Yeah, we're really digging into the toy box, all right.
He collapses into a fetal position and sobs. A moment later, a shadow falls over him.
What is your name, child?
Vale recoils, startled by this acknowledgement. He looks up at the vampire Ahul, portrayed by Joe Taslim, who looks over him.
You can see me? Yes, my friend. You are not alone.
Ahul reaches a hand down to Vale, who grabs it eagerly, pulls himself up to his feet, and embraces Ahul with his entire body, burying his face in his neck and dripping tears onto his cape. Ahul tenderly pats Vale on the back, like a parent consoling his child. Vale lays his head on Ahul's shoulder, crying and laughing and smiling like a madman at the relief of being perceived. He has never been so happy. Then another shadow falls over Vale's face. Vale opens his eyes and screams with terror, pushing back off of Ahul and falling back onto the floor. He looks up as another man steps forward to stand beside Ahul. It's Dracula, portrayed by Mads Mikkelsen.
Oh God, no. It's you.
Have we met? I don't recognize you, but evidently you're not very memorable. Vale is breathless, but that's not the only reason he pauses. It takes a moment for him to remember it himself.
I'm Vale. I was in the Dark Legion.
Were you? Oh, yes. You're one of the men who was killed before the Legion even reached my castle. Dracula walks casually around the table, where the surviving Legionnaires continue to sit quietly, unaware of his presence. He indicates Victor. They appear to have gotten over it.
Fuck you, bloodsucker.
Ahul gestures for both of them to calm down.
There's no need to antagonize him. He is our best lead, after all. Your best lead to what?
Dracula once again approaches Vale. I'm looking for an old friend of yours, Amenet. Somehow, she's escaped from hell, and I mean to follow her out. My brother here picked up the scent of her magics, and it led us here to you. I assume you were once her thrall?
What's it to you? I don't know anything. I didn't even know she escaped, or that she was here to begin with.
Dracula turns to Ahul and sighs. I told you this was a waste of time. Ahul doesn't respond. He has wandered over to the table to study the faces of the depressed Legionnaires, who now sit sullen and quiet. Dracula turns back to Vale. I had hoped that perhaps the princess had an accomplice inside who aided her escape, or that she enlisted some past servants in her next design. Dracula looks back at the table of Vale's aloof friends, and at Ahul, and chuckles. I suppose she forgot you too. How deliciously cruel not to be remembered even by those for whom you gave your life. It's not a fate I ever feared for myself, but I confess, of all the nightmares we've visited, this may be the most grim.
It's not a nightmare. Does he not know? Darling, you're in hell. I know I'm in hell. But this is real. Don't ask me how I know, I just do. That's part of it. That's the worst part of it.
Vale crumbles once again onto the floor. Dracula laughs. Ahul clears his throat. He's standing behind Nick, looking at his phone over his shoulder.
Oh, dear brother.
Ahul beckons to Dracula to join him. Dracula rolls his eyes but walks over to him, more willing to accommodate Ahul's condescension and vice versa after months of traveling together. Ahul points to something on Nick's phone screen. It's an article about an artifact belonging to the estate of Richard Wagner that went missing during a recent disastrous opera festival in Vienna.
Perhaps this trip wasn't a waste after all.
Dracula purses his lips, then rushes to Vale and lifts him forcefully off his feet. When is this? Is this now?
I don't know. I think so. It repeats things sometimes, and then it jumps ahead. I go where Nick goes. What does it matter? We're fucking dead.
For the moment. You've been years without company, Mr. Vale. Dracula pulls Vale in close and sneers. I trust you'll accommodate a few house guests. Cut to black.
Post-credits scene. The camera is zoomed in close on the ground of hell. It looks like burnt, blistered flesh, charred except for where it cracks, revealing pink and white raw flesh that sizzles in the hot air. Blood drips from somewhere above the frame, but as soon as it hits the meaty earth, it evaporates. We zoom out to see Count Dracula, standing with one arm extended, sleeve rolled up high. He looks away as Ahul feasts on his blood, his mouth wrapped like a leech around Dracula's forearm.
Haven't you had enough yet?
Ahul doesn't respond.
This is pathetic. Even in hell, you can't kick this insatiable craving.
Ahul comes up for air. We've been walking for weeks. You'd be thirsty too if you hadn't been made mortal. Dracula gives him a disgusted look as he fixes his sleeves.
You heard Carmilla. Set is planning on opening Death's door, and I plan on being there when he does. If I'm lucky, Van Helsing and the Morton fool will be there to try and stop it, and I can kill 3 birds with 1 stone.
And how do you know the Vale boy's visions were accurate?
It's all we have to act on, so we act.
You call this acting? There's not been a single sign of Pazuzu anywhere.
I'm not looking for Pazuzu.
Who then? Hyde?
Perhaps. This is the realm of demons. We're bound to come across one eventually. When we do, we will tell them our tale.
There's a sudden poof of smoke, and a voice speaks from behind them. Did someone say, tail? Dracula and Ahul turn to see the Collector, played by Billy Zane. He looks like a half-rotted corpse, his flesh shrinking on his skull. His nose is fallen off, leaving just a hole. His hair hangs down in long, white wisps. He smiles wide, missing almost half of his teeth. Who's this ugly bastard?
The Collector, I believe. Died after a woman spit blood into his mouth, if I remember correctly.
Sounds like a proper Saturday night to me. The Collector squeals with laughter. Now that's one I haven't heard before. I'm going to hang on to that if you don't mind. Ahul gives him a confused, disgusted look.
We need directions, demon. We're looking for the palace of the god of hell.
The Collector cocks his head and smiles even wider. Why, you'll have to be more specific.
What do you mean more specific? Set, the god of death. Tell me where he resides.
Interesting. Very, very interesting.
I see. You're a collector. You want payment. Fine. What do I owe you in exchange?
Oh, no. You owe me nothing. Ever since I was banished down here, I've become a collector of stories. I wander from hell to hell, looking into everyone's personal little torture chambers and taking their terrible histories for myself. And whatever you're up to, Count Dracula, well, it seems like it will make quite the story. So, you're looking for Set. the god of death, as you seem to think. He points out into the nothingness. Walk that way until your first blister pops. Then make a hard right until you hit the river of molten gold. Wade through it and make camp on the other side until the flesh returns to your legs. Walk downstream along the river until you're stricken blind, then follow the sound of the lashings. If you step in more molten gold, you've gone too far. When your vision returns, you'll see the Temple of Set.
And that's that? We owe you nothing for your service?
It seems to me you owe enough already. Just know I'll be watching. And no matter what happens, I'll be sure to tell the tale. Dracula and Ahul exchange a look, then set off in the direction the demon pointed. As they recede into the distance, the collector begins to laugh. As the laugh grows, it gets higher and higher pitched until it's practically a shriek, and we cut to black.
Post-credits scene. From black, a blurry red image begins to form, like the inversion of smoke clearing from our view. The smoke creates the image. When it finally takes shape, we see a great Gothic castle made of white stone and red-brown mortar, surrounded by a trench. From our low angle, we can't judge the width or depth of it. A blistering sun hangs in a red sky. We cut to a reverse angle and pull back from a face that has been burned and scarred beyond recognition. His eyes, which had been burned out of his skull, are now reforming, and eventually we recognize this figure as Dracula, played by Mads Mikkelsen. He's laying on a cracked gray desert, parched and emaciated. There's a trail of disturbed dirt behind him that goes back as far as we can see. He's been crawling. Correction, there are 2 long trails. Dracula's and another that runs parallel but ends a few meters behind him. This, too, has been carved by a prone figure. This one, a smoking, bleached white skeleton in the tattered remains of 17th century Bantonese warrior garb. A sheathed broadsword is strapped to the skeleton's back. Dracula, his skin just about restored, rolls onto his back, panting as the skeleton catches up with him. Its bony hand grabs hold of Dracula's ankle, then stops crawling. The skull looks up at Dracula's face. Patches of the skeleton's flesh also briefly grow back, only to burst into flames seconds later. He is perpetually on fire. For a moment, he's healed enough that we can make out the face of Ahul, played by Joe Taslim. During a moment of relative constitution, Ahul tries to speak.
Here?
Only for his lips and tongue to burn away again, reducing his speech to a formless whine until his throat dissolves.
Let's go.
Dracula nods, though the eye holes in Ahul's skull are billowing smoke, so it's unlikely he can see anything. In case he can hear, Dracula speaks. Yes, there's a castle up ahead, just as Pazuzu said. The god of death awaits us.
Not Pazuzu.
Wasn't it Pazuzu who said that? Oh, the collector. Sorry.
Collector.
Yes, there's a castle up ahead, just as the collector said. The god of death awaits us. Ahul squirms, his hand still clutching Dracula's ankle. It's not as hot here. A mere 80 degrees Celsius, perhaps. Can you stand? Ahul's head cranes upward at the sun. Dracula exhales and struggles to his feet. You've been a brave companion, Ahul. It may be a consequence of my accursed humanity, but I can't help but feel sentimental. These long years of suffering have been more bearing knowing you were suffering right alongside me. I think I would have liked to see this through together. Dracula looks down at the sizzling skeleton, then back up at the sun. But there is no sundown in this place. Or if there is, I don't care to wait for it. So this, dear brother, is where I leave you. Ahul tightens his grip on Dracula's ankle and drags himself closer. Dracula, unfazed, reaches down and draws Ahul's sword from its sheath. It is, in fact, a sundang, like the one Drac bought in Indonesia back in Dracula Lives. Ahul looks up and reaches out with his other hand, emitting a reedy whine from his charred vocal cords. Dracula swipes down with the sundang and shatters Ahul's wrist. The skeletal hand remains clasped to him like an anklet. Dracula leaves it, unbothered, turns his back on Ahul, and resumes walking towards the castle. Ahul struggles forward, crawling with his remaining hand. The incisors on his burning skull extend to points, and he screams something that we can just barely make out. Vlad! Dracula, his skin now parched and burned, but intact, arrives at the edge of the moat. He looks up at the high parapets and sees a horn silhouette. From where Dracula stands, it's impossible to tell if the horns belong to a helmet or a head. Dracula bellows. I am Dracula,
Spear of Carpathia, Bane of Abraham, heir to the throne of blood.
A voice calls back, a shrill, deafening whisper from the horned man.
You are the heir to nothing. There is no throne for the dead. There is only the pit.
Do you stand guard over Death's door?
Death's door needs no guard. It is open to any worthy enough to reach it.
I have waded through rivers of molten gold and crawled across a sea of burning sand. Lower the bridge, that I may claim my prize. The horned man laughs.
Fool, there is no bridge. If you wish to enter, you must climb.
The horned man extends an arm and points an index finger down to the moat at Dracula's feet. Dracula looks down. The pit beneath him is not filled with water nor lava. It is filled with warriors. Every warrior imaginable, from a modern soldier to a shaggy Neanderthal. They bear an eternity of battle scars, improperly healed wounds, and blistering sores.
Did you believe you were the first to find this place? They have been coming for millennia. Each of them believed they were worthy, but for every warrior who reached the summit, another 10 failed to escape. Now, they lie in wait to ensure that no one may have what they failed to achieve. My army of spite.
The warriors below look up at him and scream with rage, readying their weapons and cursing him in every language. Dracula looks back up at the horned man, scowls, then turns his back and begins to scale down the wall of the pit. Close on the horned man's still indecipherable face.
You shall make a fine addition.
Dracula climbs down the wall. After his hand unclasps from each thin handhold, it retreats back into the rock face. No way out. From about 10 feet above, he drops into the pit, still facing the wall. The warriors form a semicircle around him. Dracula tightens his grip on his sword and looks over his shoulder at the bloodthirsty horde. Gentlemen, welcome to hell. Cut to black.
And that, ladies and gentlethems, was the Dracula in Hell post-credits octology, I'm calling it.
It was such a fun exercise. Like, going into this knowing that, I think the explanation that we gave at the time was that we'd advanced Dracula too close to where we want him at the end of the phase to squeeze in an entire movie, right?
Yes.
We didn't think that we had a movie in there, but we maybe have a couple little ideas.
And we didn't want to just completely drop him because we knew
he's
there
kind
was
of
more story
important.
to tell.
He's Dracula, right?
Yeah.
We don't want to leave him on the back burner. So instead, we made him ever present. And I think in a really fun way. Also, I like that we keep, especially this phase, if season 2 was the season where we did a lot of like swerves for the audience, that this is the one where we swerved each other as much as possible. And one of the ways that we made that part of the format of the show was that without really knowing anything but the rough endpoint of where we wanted Dracula in Hell to go, we would just each write a chapter,
having no idea
and
what the other
we wouldn't
person,
tell the other person anything.
Yes.
And we'd be like, now work with that. And it was just like a fun new thing to do on the show.
Exquisite Corpse style. Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely.
Really nice.
Very fun. And we ended up with that one time where in the episode where I announced Aminet was coming back, you had written...
also brought Aminet back.
Yeah. Which was
Thankfully,
very funny.
I didn't
and then we had to
also
write around
bring
that,
her back in the episode, because that would have been, as I thought about it, like having her appear as a character, I'm like, you know what? Let me tease it. Because these should be short. Let me tease Aminet. And then you also teased Aminet in a different way. And by the end of it, we were like, okay, he's looking for Aminet. He's not going to find her because you already pulled her out of hell. And then you had to address that in your chapter. And that was fun. I just, one of the, part of the gimmick of the show is dealing with how do you manage a shared universe. And that was like a really neat challenge to do on like a really manageable scale.
And I thought we did a good job of advancing the story piece by piece, each one. Like, it kind of, at the beginning, we established this pattern, right, of Dracula being trapped in his hell. But as soon as we've established the pattern, then we break him out of it and we get him on a journey. And, like, I think, hopefully, I haven't listened to the whole 35 minutes straight through, but I hope that it does create a pretty compelling narrative for Dracula as he tries to find his way out of hell.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like... You ever go back and watch like the Genndy Tartakovsky Star Wars Clone Wars?
No.
Okay, well, they're dope, but especially that first season where there are a bunch of basically 2.5-minute shorts that were made largely because they wanted to make a toy line.
Yeah.
When you watch them back to back, they don't really like become like a movie.
Yeah.
It's a lot of cool shorts. These are much more dialogue heavy than those Clone Wars shorts. Season 2 is actually a little bit more cohesive. But I wonder, listening to them back to back, we're all going to find out, does this feel like I'm marathoning a bunch of shorts, or does it feel like I'm hearing a story unfold? And that will be, I'm really excited to listen to it that way.
It's also appropriate because Dracula Lives was so episodic, right?
Yeah.
Like that was in a 5-part episodic format, and then to keep his story going in that sort of episodic way is kind of fun.
Yeah, it's really appropriate. It just ended up being really cute.
And with Ahul coming back and
Victoire shows up.
Victoire and Pazuzu.
Yeah.
It really kind of is a Dracula Lives sequel.
It is. Like I like the idea, like I'm gonna make a little poster for it. It'll be in that same font. A font that I recently saw in use somewhere. That was kind of cool. I was watching something and I saw they used that same font, like something that was something fancy.
Nice.
And I thought it was pretty cool. Oh, it was a Will Ospreay t-shirt.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
But that is going to do it for this recap episode. Thank you for sticking with us through the madness. In 2 weeks, we will be back for the 50th episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark Universe? And because it's a big milestone, we have a big guest. We will be welcoming Bill Corbett, a.k.a. the voice of Crow T. Robot for the sci-fi era of Mystery Science Theater 3000, as well as he played Brain Guy, a.k.a. Observer in those seasons, and he was a writer on it prior to that. But Bill Corbett himself of Riff Tracks and Mystery Science Theater 3000 will be joining us to pitch a Universal remake of Robot Monster, which is a film that was done on MST3K in the first season.
Yeah, way before he was involved in the show.
Yes.
So it's, first of all, I am so fucking excited to have Bill Corbett on the show.
He has been so nice. It's going to be incredible. He's a childhood hero of both of ours.
Yeah, I mean, really a huge influence on our sense of humor.
Yeah.
But it's crazy to think, like, it was very, very cool having, say, like Joseph Fink on the show.
Sure.
And that he's sort of, he changed the business that we're now in.
Yeah.
Right?
And we're big fans of
And
his.
we're really big. Yeah, obviously, like, I listened to, like, Night Vale on so many commutes.
Yeah.
Back in my record store days, especially. But this is, like, going, like, deeper.
Yeah, this is childhood.
This is, like, I mean, I think maybe we could, if we had, like, a writer from like Pete Garra's Simpsons on the show, it would be
absolutely.
like that.
Yeah.
Hopefully we won't. It seems like based on the communications that you two of you have been doing to put this one together, this was a Dalton get. Can't take any credit for this one.
He was a fan of the B-69s, which is how we started following each other.
See, that's still paying dividends.
Yes.
But it seems like he's just a swell guy. This won't be a don't meet your hero situation.
Very, very
cool.
swell
Meet
guy.
your heroes situation.
So tune in 2 weeks to see if we embarrass ourselves in front of our hero.
Yeah, I think we should get all the gushing out here, right?
Yes.
We won't gush on that show.
We'll be very normal.
We'll be normal as hell. I will not be dressed as a Balerian from Space Mutiny.
Am I a Balerian?
Okay, ask me point blank if I'm a Balerian.
Are you a Balerian?
No.
Okay.
Fuck. Why am I dressed like this?
We will do none of that on the episode with Bill Corbett.
We've done it here.
We're figuring out if we're Balerians before the episode. If you don't know what we're talking about, please watch. Okay, so if you don't know what we're talking about, there's a channel that re-uploads Mystery Science Theater episodes in 4K, like remastered in high def, and they just put Space Mutiny up.
Oh, you gotta go watch it.
Go watch the Mystery Science Theater episode of Space Mutiny on YouTube in 4K.
There are so many great episodes of MS2-3K, but of the era in which Bill Corbett was Crow, this is the masterpiece.
It's such a good first episode if you've never seen Mystery Science Theater.
I also highly recommend the Twilight Riff Tracks episode, which also has Bill on it.
Great.
It is as good as an MST3K episode ever was. It is so good. It is the only way I've ever gotten through the movie, and I've watched it many times.
To this day, it's the only way I've seen Twilight is through the Riff Track.
I would call it, personally, I think it's the best Riff Tracks episode.
Yeah. So you've got some homework. And then 2 weeks after that, set willing, if we can get through it, we will have part 1 of Dark Legion Death's Door, followed by part 2 a week later. So we have a lot to do. So we're going to get to writing, and we will see you in 2 weeks with Bill Corbett. And until next time, Wait, hold.
Wait, hang on.
Also subscribe to the Patreon.
Oh, yes, please join us on the
Patreon.com/Dylan and
Patreon.
Dalton.
Yes, if you heard the last episode, we have just recently added some new subscriber levels to the Patreon. We would super love your support at any level. And we did not, because of the Dracula thing, play a clip from the Patreon episode like we normally do.
Why not?
Oh, I guess we did.
Yes, we did.
You've already heard that, so you know it's great. If you want to hear the rest of that episode and the other now years worth of monthly podcasts that we've done on Are You Afraid of Dylan and Dalton, we are about to embark on some really exciting stuff on that show. The next year is looking absolutely jam-packed with really fun content that more closely resembles what we do here.
Yes.
So
we're now winging some pitches on the bonus pod.
Yes.
So join us over there. Our next one, we are going to be on the air pitching a Dark Universe version of Mamma Mia with sirens.
Yes.
So if you want to hear how we would put Mamma Mia in the Dark Universe, listen to the bonus pod.
Yep. That'll be up 3 weeks after this episode, I guess, right after Bill Corbett.
Yes.
Can't wait to promote that on the Bill Corbett episode.
And now, until next time,
Stay afraid of the Dark Universe.